From sneaking in a dish that wasn't even made by the one who presented it, to ignoring the judges altogether.
Take it serious or take your apron off.
Oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me.
Here's a look at some of the most blatantly ignorant chefs from MasterChef. And this contestant from Season 5 ended up facing the worst consequence ever over a completely stupid mistake. So, in Episode 6, things started to spiral right from the start of the Elimination Challenge. The contestants were tasked with replicating the signature dishes of two past winners, but who were they?
Last year's winner, Luca. First ever MasterChef Junior winner, Alexander.
Luca, the winner of Season 4, and Alexander, the first ever MasterChef Junior. I love that show, but it's a lot harder to make fun of than the OG. Luca presented his classic veal dish.
This is my pancetta wrapped veal with grana padano and sage, served with radicchio, apples, and finished with a very classic white wine sauce.
While Alexander whipped up a delightful panna cotta.
Passion fruit panna cotta with a juniper berry raspberry coulis, candied hazelnuts, and a lavender crumble.
At just 14 years old, Alexander had made a top-tier restaurant-worthy dish. I mean, this little guy deserved every bit of the MasterChef Junior title that he earned. But now, let's get back to the challenge. A few of the contestants would have to replicate Luca's savory dish, while the others would have to go with Andrew's sweet dish. And Elizabeth was pulling the strings.
My basic strategy is assign the panna cotta who don't have the finesse and pull it off, assign the veal to people who have weaker palates.
Now, on the surface, Alexander's dessert may come across as easier to make, but there were also those who found it really challenging.
Alexander's dish, a panna cotta, cooked cream, but held together with gelatin. Very technical thing to be able to accomplish.
Jamie was down to the final steps for her panna cotta, and that's when things took a turn for the worst.
Somebody took a panna cotta off my tray.
Jamie could not understand if someone was trying to sabotage her or if it was just a genuine mistake. What do you think? Was there a cat burglar amongst them that night? Either way, poor Jamie had no idea about what was happening. But she did end up paying the price for it.
First panna cotta, it just puddles.
Yup, the 2 containers of panna cotta she was left with didn't exactly meet the mark. And since she didn't even have her hands on a third, it made it all the worse. She was so devastated. There was quite frankly no hope left for Jamie, and she dreaded what was about to come. Now, when it was time for the tasting, nobody should be shocked that things didn't go in her favor.
It is not set up on me. If I would have had a third one, maybe.
But when Graham tasted it, despite the dish's disappointing appearance, the flavors were surprisingly on point.
It's like a really good pudding, but the flavor's great.
Either way, embarrassment was written all over Jamie's face. Given the situation, the only way she could stand a chance was if someone screwed up way worse than her, which at this point was remotely impossible. But look who stepped up for the tasting next.
Tyler, please, let's go.
3 blindfolds, please.
Chef Ramsay knew exactly what was going on, but he wanted to hear it from Tyler first.
Is there anything you want to tell me about this dish?
I had a, jackknife powerbomb the ramekin on the plate just to get it out of there.
Wait, does this dish look familiar to you? Look, it's not exactly like 2 contestants never failed in making a given dish on the show, but to make the exact same mistakes? Now, that could only mean one thing. And Chef Ramsay was ready to expose the truth.
Someone has brought us a dish that they did not cook.
But Tyler tried to put an act up. He looked shocked at the allegation Chef Ramsay was making.
What do you mean, Chef?
Stay there.
I mean, come on, Tyler, face it. You know exactly what he meant. But Chef Ramsay wasn't about to let the matter slide. Oh, no. Like, what he had done was seriously low. And as the famous chef started marching to the back of the kitchen, Tyler started to freak out. The tension was as real as it could get.
I'm getting pretty nervous. My heart's beating as fast as it can beat. Oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me.
And then came the major reveal. Chef Ramsay headed straight to the chillers, pulled out another tray, and walked right back to the front. Now, he only had one question for Tyler, and he expected a no-nonsense answer from him.
What do you see on that tray, young man?
My ramekins.
Your ramekins?
Yes, Chef.
But Tyler decided to try and worm his way out of trouble.
I put my ramekins on the top shelf. I don't know if they got switched. I don't know. Okay.
And the famous chef was having none of it.
You didn't. They're on the bottom shelf, bottom left-hand side.
You put 4 ramekins in the blast chiller. I just pulled out the same 4.
With that, Ramsay went ahead and revealed what had happened.
You served us Jamie's panna cotta.
Oh, damn, that's more like Hell's Kitchen behavior than MasterChef. Although Chef Ramsay for some reason decided to cut him some slack, I honestly believe it was a deliberate and desperate attempt to get ahead in the game. And the only reason he got caught in the act is because he stole from one contestant who screwed up the worst that night.
I think you panicked. I think you ran in there with seconds to go and grabbed somebody else's dish.
Tyler was caught red-handed, and apologizing was the only way out for him.
I had no clue. I apologize.
The final judgment came down to what the other two judges thought about the dish. Jamie's dish to be precise. And well, Joe was pretty straightforward with his decision and refused to taste something that Tyler hadn't made.
It would be disrespectful to every other contestant who played by the rules.
Although Chef Ramsay believed that it was a mistake, let's not forget that rules are rules. After some deliberation, the judges were ready with their final decision.
Tyler, I am so sorry, but your journey is going to end tonight.
And Tyler's response?
I understand your decision, and I appreciate everything you guys have allowed me to do.
He bowed out of the competition, respecting the judge's decision and dropping another apology for good measure. But guess whose response totally won my heart? Jamie's.
No, I'm sorry that you grabbed mine.
Such a sweetheart she is, huh? Anyway, you can't deny that it was one of the most embarrassing eliminations that's ever been seen on the show. But hey, Tyler wasn't the only one Chef Ramsay taught a lesson to in his day. Now, let me walk you over to what happened in episode 1 of season 9 when contestants were fighting for their apron in the auditions. And this is when we were introduced to Mark.
These people might be a little older, but they can't cook like me.
My name is Mark, and I am a dishwasher.
The confidence. Working as a dishwasher in his mother's restaurant in Maine, Mark was here to prove his worth. And for someone as young as him, the dude was beaming with confidence.
Growing up in a restaurant at such a young age really did steep me in the culture and the respect it takes to succeed in the kitchen.
But look, there is a clear difference between being confident and being overconfident, and this dude definitely didn't fall in the right category. Mark believed that he'd nail every dish in the competition, but he had no idea what was in store for him. When he was preparing his signature dish to impress the judges, Chef Ramsay happened to ask him a genuine question. Why didn't he go to culinary school? And Mark's answer kinda showcased the true extent of his arrogance.
I find that I've learned enough in my own field, personally, independently, and just as well through my own experience.
Yeah, this dude had no idea what it meant to be humble. I mean, I kinda sensed he was cocky from his earlier interactions, but this was on a whole new level. And Chef Ramsay's simple wow was enough to tell us exactly what he thought of the guy. But here's the thing. He wasn't just overbearing, he was deluded.
I'm one of the more talented people in this room.
And guess who vibed with his over-the-top confidence?
Even at 19 years old, you feel you're above the class.
Absolutely.
Anyway, despite all the boasting, his dish was nowhere near perfect or even fairly decent.
Visually, what do you think?
I like how it looks.
You're full of
The famous chef was all set to burst his little bubble.
You know and I know, but that's undercooked.
His lamb was grossly undercooked, and the fact that he tried to pass it off by saying it was decent really got on Chef Ramsay's nerves.
Man up a little bit. Got me?
Absolutely.
That must have hurt his ego real bad. But it wasn't just about the lamb. Even his cauliflower puree was more butter than cauliflower. And even for an old school chef like Chef Ramsay, it was way too much for him. And when Joe stepped up to the plate, he didn't have anything good to say either.
You got a lot of swagger behind the bench. You cook like a kid who's been in a restaurant. All the swagger and technique has to translate into a dish.
Joe threw shade at Mark's attitude and asked him to back his skills with a little more technique. And where would he learn that technique from?
You know where you learned that technique? Exactly the place you said you didn't need to go. Culinary school.
The burn, I tell you. I bet Mark regretted ditching culinary school now. Meanwhile, Chef Aaron chimed in by saying that the dish lacked imagination and was overall just plain disappointing. With that, it was now time to hand out the apron, and well, Mark obviously missed the mark by more than a mile. And you can say that his reaction kinda gave away his immaturity. While the famous chef asked him to hone his skills and come back the next year, Joe had an entirely different suggestion.
Mark, hold on a second.
You see, Joe recognized potential in Mark and offered to invest in him, but he had one condition.
You would have to take direction and listen to me as you compete to win. And if you broke that deal, the consequences would be severe.
And what do you know? Mark readily accepted the offer and earned himself a white apron. Now, I'll definitely be going over Mark's journey on the show and reveal whether or not he really lived up to Joe's expectations in some of my upcoming videos, but for now, here comes another Mark from Season 8 who became the target of Chef Ramsay's undying fury. So, in episode 3, during the Mystery Box Challenge, yet another contestant seemed to be bursting with confidence.
I feel incredibly ready to win this whole thing.
The whole competition.
I didn't come here to lose.
Let's see if it was well-founded. Meet Mark Togney, arguably one of the worst cooks of that season. However, things didn't go as planned when Chef Ramsay singled out the contestants whose dishes stood out the most.
Sam, Heather, Mark. Head on up here, let's go.
Mark was left speechless. His joy was through the roof. Nevertheless, Chef Ramsay then made a crazy revelation.
Mark, Heather, and Sam, you three stood out for all the wrong reasons.
Yup, the judges were seriously let down by the subpar performance of the bottom 3 contestants, being Mark, Sam, and Heather. But things were about to take a turn for the worst. When it was time to taste Mark's dish, Chef Christina laid it all out by giving a brutally honest opinion.
The pancake, it has problems. It's undercooked.
But wait, there's more.
Stuck on the plate is like the finesse isn't there. The hash brown, it almost looks like a piece of meat.
Everything about the dish seemed to be way off. Especially my all-time favorite, the hash brown. I mean, come on, all that confidence earlier and this is what you came up with? However, instead of just owning up to his mistake, Mark thought that making excuses would be the best way out.
I feel like it was the fourth quarter with 2 minutes left and I ran onto the field without my helmet or my jock strap.
But Chef Ramsay had little patience for excuses, especially those infused with football jargon. In fact, Chef Christina also found the dish utterly disappointing. Knowing Mike's potential, she recalled the impressive ravioli that earned him an apron. And somehow, he found it necessary to resort to dropping some convoluted football terminology in his defense. Either way, Mike eventually found himself in the elimination test. And instead of working towards regaining the judge's confidence, he decided to take his sweet time getting things done.
I've been in this position in my life before. Pressure is my middle name.
When Chef Christina walked over to him for an update, at first, he claimed to be working on a redo of his pancakes with chocolate chips and baked eggs on the side. But then, he said something that left her completely confused.
If you don't execute the basic play first, then why you didn't try the flea flicker?
Back to the football analogies. This guy was a caricature of sports, bro. I mean, could someone please remind him that he wasn't on a football field, but in the MasterChef kitchen? Because just take a look at the pace he was working at. Chef Christina was legitimately concerned for him.
Looks like Mark doesn't care.
I might want to switch up here.
Yeah, she kinda had his attitude all figured out. But the famous chef was about to experience it firsthand. At the 10-minute mark, when Chef Ramsay decided to share a word of wisdom with Heather, Mike made a comment that pissed Chef Ramsay the hell off.
You know what you could do, Heather? Just do what I do and ignore them.
I mean, who does this guy think he is? The famous chef had had enough with the guy, and he decided to confront him once and for all.
Is this a joke for you?
No.
Is this just a big show off for your mates?
No.
Take it serious or take your apron off.
And believe me, it wasn't a mere threat, it was an ultimatum. And with just 2 minutes left on the clock, Mark wasn't getting any more respectful.
Mark, you still got 1 minute. Mark.
I'm working on it.
The audacity of this man surprises me even after I've watched these clips hundreds of times after putting this video together. Now, fast forward to the tasting, and Mark was so incredibly confident about his dish. But the famous chef wasn't anywhere near matching his energy.
That is tough to look at.
And when Chef Ramsay asked him if that was the best that he could do, guess what he had to say?
Yes. I successfully completed the 28 sweep, and I think I scored a touchdown.
Even he thought he was being a douche, and you know what? I couldn't agree more. Meanwhile, the famous chef wondered if Mark really had the passion and hunger to reach the top of the competition. As for Christina, well, considering she all but babied him every step of the way, seeing him fail like this was just not fun for her.
And then that bacon you put in uncooked. Why not sear the bacon off beforehand?
Although she found that the pancake was cooked properly, there was a looming question that bothered her.
Really just a matter of whether a chocolate chip pancake and baked eggs is worthy of this competition.
With a dish like that and an attitude to match, one thing was sealed: Mark's fate in the competition.
Sam and Heather, make your way to the balcony.
He had it coming. Mark was then eliminated for failing to improve on his previous dish, and more so for his disrespectful attitude throughout the entire challenge. But this next contestant can rival Mark when it comes to being a smartass. Yep, I'm talking about Jeff from Season 8, and boy was he a handful. I mean, he's one of those contestants who mess with not just his competitors, but also the judges. Now, I gotta highlight this elimination challenge specifically when things started to get a little heated. This time, the judges threw an unusual curveball, where the contestants would not be performing solo.
All of these home cooks right here are going to be competing in teams of 2.
Jason decides who will be paired up for tonight's challenge.
That's right, teams of 2. Which means it all came down to communication, collaboration, and self-control. Now, having won the Mystery Box Challenge, Bowen was tasked with picking the pairs. And guess who ended up with Jeff?
Jeff's kind of roar will swallow up this person's voice. Caitlin, I pair you with Jeff.
Yeah, it was just a disaster waiting to happen. So, for the elimination test, the contestants were tasked with preparing an amazing Mexican platter.
We have some homemade tortilla chips with the wonderful pico de gallo. Right next to that, we have the spot prawn ceviche with avocado and shaved radish.
If this test wasn't already hard enough, Chef Christina then dropped a bomb that shook things up even further.
You're not going to be cooking together at the same time. One of you starts cooking, and your partner must stand at the end of your station.
And nope, she didn't stop there.
When we shout, switch, you will trade position.
Believe me, the pressure was insane. Because one of the pairs started to crumble like no other.
Searing the meat first, though.
Yep, exactly.
Yup, Jeff and Caitlin were struggling to get grips with the situation. Although they were off to a great start, soon they started to face challenges they never even imagined about.
The chips done and out of the way.
I make tortilla chips all the time. We don't need that right now.
Looks like someone's going through some major power dynamic issues. If you ask me, I think Jeff was just throwing unnecessary dominance into the mix in an attempt to control Caitlin's every move. Well, can someone please introduce him to the concept of teamwork, please? I mean, things got so obvious that even Chef Ramsay was quick to notice the growing power struggle.
Look at how controlling Jeff is.
Like, why am I even surprised? Now, don't forget that this was the same guy who didn't shy away from arguing with the Gordon Ramsay at every chance that he got. So, of course he was gonna try to assert his dominance wherever, whenever, and to whoever he could, right? Chef Christina had a different take on the matter though. According to her, Caitlin just wasn't strong enough to stand her ground, and well, in a way, both of them were at fault. One for being too submissive, and the other for being overly assertive. Interesting take, but she's not wrong. Because you can't deny that it was just painful to watch Jeff trying to be the boss. Especially when he didn't even command that kind of respect in the first place.
For the pico de gallo?
I can do this part.
Jeff completely ignored Caitlin's presence and went ahead on his own. In his desperate attempt to have everything come out perfectly, he forgot the main goal of the challenge. Yup, there's the whole notion of teamwork again. Strange how it keeps coming up, huh? Chef Aaron even came up to their station and told Caitlin that they needed to communicate better in order to work things out. But even then, Jeff's attitude towards Caitlin continued to be as cold as ice.
Those aromatics thing, you need to season that again for the vegetables.
I am going to, and I know what we have to do.
Correction, he was downright rude. Anyway, when it was time to present their dish, Jeff wanted something to be made known to the judges.
I took a leading role with this entire tag team challenge. Caitlin didn't bring a lot to the table.
My guy, it's because you didn't even let her. What's more, according to him, they failed to get the small details right, but everything else was on point. But Jeff's opinion didn't really matter, least of all here. First things first, Chef Ramsay made it clear that their inability to communicate and work things through as a team was frustrating to watch. And to make things worse, when he asked what they'd rate their platter, while Caitlin said a 3 or 4 at best, Jeff's answer went in a completely different direction.
I beg to differ. I would have actually gone a little bit higher. I would have gone a 7 because everything is there.
At this point, Chef Ramsay was so upset with him.
Because everything's there, it doesn't mean that this is on a 7. I am not going to accept that.
In fact, the famous chef was beyond disappointed.
Now, let's go to the churros. 7 is not. Let's get that right.
He decimated their platter, saying that the lamb looked like dog food, he wouldn't even bother looking at the tacos, and 4 of their churros would equal 1 actual churro. But that's not all.
I was working as fast as I can to shred it with 2 forks and...
I think that about says it all. To add insult to injury, Ramsay said that the only thing that he loved was the china that they served the food on. The one thing that they had absolutely zero part in making. Anyway, when it was time to decide who went home, the result was pretty obvious. No, it wasn't Jeff, it was Caitlin, for letting Jeff walk all over her. As Caitlin left with her head low, she brought a lesson well learned with her. In MasterChef, there was no space for contestants who can't take charge and speak up for themselves. Now, here's your turn to weigh in. Could you think of more times when chefs made stupid mistakes? Well, make sure to drop your thoughts in the comments section down below. And hey, don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe, and turn on my post notifications. Now, if you thought this video was crazy, then make sure to check my social media pages for all my recent content. And this next video right here, well, it's even better, so you better not miss it.